Hello, class. Today, I wanted to talk about one of the most dark and twisted celebrity scandals of all time. One woman walks into a Saks Fifth Avenue, picked up some designer clothes, and walked out without paying for them. Just who is this woman, and did she ever stop to think about the poor, innocent shareholders? First, I wanted to give just a little bit of backstory as to how we got to this place. Winona Ryder was born in 1971 and spent most of her childhood on a commune. She lived on a 380-acre plot of land with 7 other families, with each of the families living in their own houses. They didn't have any electricity, just living off the land, but more in an eco-communalism kind of way, not an Instagram trad wife kind of way. I've seen clickbaity YouTubers describe this as a cult, but as far as I can tell, there's not really evidence for that. Some of the families who shared the land were involved with what was called the Rainbow Group, like so many of us are, you know? But the Rainbow Group is basically this hippie group that still has meetings all over the world. It has been criticized by American indigenous folks for being appropriative of indigenous spiritual beliefs, which, you know, is not too surprising for a hippie group. But beyond that, as far as I can tell, they're just people who hang out, talk about trees, world peace. And that's it. Winona started acting when she was just 15 and almost immediately hit it big when she starred in Tim Burton's Beetlejuice.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake your body liner. Shake, 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 Sinora.
Those are the dance moves of a star. Shortly afterwards, she starred in Heathers, despite her agents begging her not to do it at the time. The film absolutely bombed at the box office, but later became a cult classic. Also, weirdly, the second movie of hers in a row to become a Broadway musical. It is actually a good thing I didn't see this movie when I was a teenager because, trust me, I was insufferable enough in my Galaxy print skinny jeans. On the other hand, though, I did kind of date a guy who was a little too close to the character JD. Oh my god, his name's JD. That's like an extra level of unfortunate, isn't it? So perhaps watching this film as a teenager might have saved me some time. But I guess we'll never know. In 1990, Winona co-starred in Edward Scissorhands with her then boyfriend, Johnny Depp, who started dating her when she was 18 and he was 26. Honestly, just a drop in the ocean of weird incidents and comments various men said about her when she was still very much a minor in the 80s. Winona was the it girl of the 90s, alongside her best friend, Gwyneth Paltrow. This picture looks like when I meet back up with my high school friends. Objectively, this friendship makes no sense, but somehow it's a thing. But in 1993, Winona and Johnny Depp broke up, and even in the public, this breakup was pretty hard on Winona. Winona at this time began taking sleeping pills to calm her anxiety attacks and actually spent a few days in an inpatient psychiatric ward before seeking therapy. Her struggles with her mental health at that time inspired her to executive produce and star in the movie Girl Interrupted, which is based on a real-life experience of a woman who spent 18 months inside a woman's psychiatric facility. This movie was also just a Tumblr photo set staple in 2014, because even if the movie itself didn't glamorize mental illness, the 2014 Tumblr girlies absolutely did. I'd go right from reblogging this photo set right here to the Disneyland Peter Pan self-harm story, not a milligram of Wellbutrin in sight. While promoting Girl Interrupted, Winona gave an interview to Barbara Walters, where she opened up for the first time publicly about the extent of her mental health struggles in the 90s.
I used to drive around at night and listen to music because I couldn't sleep. And I was driving around and I was wishing so badly that I had someone to talk to, a friend, someone, and I didn't. And I saw this magazine stand, outdoor magazine stand, and I saw myself on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and it said something like Winona Ryder, the luckiest girl in the world. And it broke my heart because there I was, you know, in so much pain and feeling so confused, feeling so lost in my life. I wasn't allowed to complain because I was so lucky, you know, and I was so blessed, and I made a lot of money, and, you know, my problems weren't real problems. And if I'm as nauseated as the next person when actors complain about their lives. You know, we are We are blessed. We are lucky. But the stuff that I was going through was difficult.
And you can tell how rare that was at this time by Barbara's follow-up questions to these very vulnerable confessions.
And it's gone? It's been gone, or does it come back?
It comes back every now and then. I have, you have your really good days and bad days. And I'm certainly not immune to it. It's part of being a human being is to, some days you glide and excel and you soar, and some days you fall and crumble, and it's a nightmare and you think you're never going to get up again.
Girl Interrupted was not a box office success, but it did go on to win multiple Oscars. It was clear by this point that Winona's career wasn't about doing the biggest box office movie she could find. She was weird. She was a weirdo. She didn't fit in, and the girlies didn't want her to fit in. But then, in December of 2001, it happened. But before we get into the most scandalous celebrity trial that ever existed, I wanted to take a brief moment to talk about today's sponsor, Trainwell. Trainwell is a one-on-one personal training service, but you don't need to go to a gym. It is all done through a super handy app where you can access your personalized workouts that are suited to your fitness goals, as well as connect you to your personal trainer who is always there to hold you accountable when you need it, but also to do things like answer questions about form or do regular video and phone check-ins with them. Lately, I have been feeling the effects of just 26 years of really bad posture, and I was able to discuss that with my personal trainer, Jill, who was able to suggest and incorporate exercises that would help strengthen my back, as well as strengthen my core, which are things I always need to work on. I also always appreciate the visual demonstrations that accompany the exercises that you're given, so you always know how these exercises should look when you're doing them. Trainwell offers a quick and easy quiz at the start of your journey to match you with a personal trainer who best fits your needs, but if you find that you don't vibe with that personal trainer, you can change at any time you want through the app. Take the quiz to find your perfect trainer and get 14 days of free training here or with the link in my description. Winona Ryder went to Saks Fifth Avenue. She comes in with obnoxiously large bags, she shops around, and as she exits the dressing room with some of the items she tried on, her bags are noticeably more stuffed than when she came in, and she now has a hat on that she didn't have before. This look is really giving three children stacked on top of each other in a trench coat on a luxury crime spree. Oh, are you leaving? As she leaves, security guards follow her outside before escorting her back inside, now carrying all of her bags. Winona had actually purchased 3 pieces of clothing worth more than $3,000. But she was also found with 19 unpaid for items worth more than $5,700, or about $10,000 today. This included some Calvin Klein socks, a $140 headband, and a $750 thermal t-shirt. Let's just say the price of these items might not be the crime here, but I would say it's definitely a crime, right? But according to the security guards, once they stopped her, she was actually quite lovely, very polite, apologetic. When she was caught, Winona allegedly told the guards, "I'm sorry for what I did. My director directed me to shoplift for a role I was preparing." You know, of all the method acting we've seen over the years, this would be pretty inventive, and somehow not even nearly as bad as Jared Leto sending a dead pig to his coworkers for Suicide Squad of all movies. When she was searched, they also found just a ton of various prescription painkillers in her purse.
When Winona was arrested, there was a virtual pharmacy in her handbag. When she was arrested on shoplifting charges, Winona was also carrying a syringe and several prescription drugs, including 1 bottle of liquid Demerol, a bottle of diazepam, 6 tablets of Valium, 40 tablets of ibuprofen, 2 tablets of Vicodin, 1 capsule of Cadian, 2 tablets of Percocet, 1 tablet of Percodam.
It's often reported that these pills were unprescribed, but the truth is actually worse than that. She did have a prescription for all of these medications, as her doctor would later confirm in court. However, this doctor pretty shortly after the trial had his medical license revoked because he allegedly just handed out huge painkiller prescriptions to his celebrity clients who asked for it. And that included people like Courtney Love and Winona Ryder. Actually, when his office was later searched, Winona supposedly had 2 different patient files, one under a pseudonym, so that the doctor could double her dosage. Winona spent that night in jail but was eventually released on a $20,000 bail. Shortly afterwards, she hired a lawyer named Mark Garagos, who may sound familiar to you because this man has really found a niche in celebrity trials. He represented Scott Peterson, Michael Jackson, Kesha, Colin Kaepernick, among many others. Initially, Garagos was actually pretty confident that he could get these charges dropped because Saks Fifth Avenue didn't even want the case to go forward. It seems regardless of Winona's actual guilt, they weren't exactly interested in having a public battle with a mega celebrity. But December of 2001 was perhaps the worst time even for a wealthy white woman to be caught shoplifting, because this was right after 9/11.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Not only did 9/11 create My Chemical Romance, Twilight, it also invoked a new wave of tough-on-crime policies, particularly for crimes like shoplifting, which directly rebelled against the participation in American capitalism that we all love so much. Tess Barker's report on this case also noted that Anne Rundle, the district attorney on this case, had come under fire only a few years before this shoplifting incident for failing to prosecute the son of a billionaire, who at the time was charged with murder and seemed very guilty to the police who charged him. So not only was this a great moment to be tough on crime, it was an even better moment to be publicly tough on petty celebrity crime. Eventually, Winona was charged with 4 felonies: grand theft, vandalism, burglary, and possession of a controlled substance. I think had Winona been just a wealthy white woman outside the public view, the charges against her likely would have been less. But because she was a public figure, and this was such a media spectacle at the time, it was a pretty easy way for the prosecution to win political points by denying Winona her otherwise expected celebrity privilege. But of course, Winona wasn't going to accept 4 felony charges. She had the money to fight it. So this case was going to trial. But everyone knows that before there can be a criminal trial, there needs to be a trial of public opinion. And boy, did the people have thoughts.
Celebrity Justice is now in session.
Hello, everyone. I'm Holly Herbert. First up today, payback time for Winona Ryder.
Not since OJ had Hollywood, the media, and the world been so excited for a trial.
One of the things about Winona Ryder is she always keeps us guessing. She can be a lady who lunches, or she could be a shoplifter, or she could be dancing on tables with Courtney Love, completely drunk at 4 a.m.
Everyone knows that we love a good child star downfall as an adult. How could this have happened other than our own direct influence? In the tabloids that followed her arrest, she was labeled as an entitled brat and not in a Charlie XCX way for stealing items she could clearly afford, that she had somehow gone off the rails with her prescription pills, that it was obnoxious she was even going to trial for something that she seemed pretty guilty of. Also, the fact that this crime was so low level somehow made the story even more salacious. Now, that's not to say that there was no empathy or nuance at the time. I actually spoke to some Gen Xers. Crazy, I know. And they actually all said that even then, they didn't really get the media frenzy at the time either. This wasn't like Ariana Grande licking a donut she didn't buy. This was as close as you could get to a victimless crime. I also looked through forums from 2001 who acknowledged, hey, shoplifting is often a form of self-harm, especially for women, and maybe we should have some empathy for what seems to be some sort of mental health crisis being played out on this huge public platform. And who could forget the Free Winona movement? Just within hours of her arrest going public, a novelty t-shirt store owner put out his own stance, a white t-shirt with the words Free Winona across them. This store, to my delight, still exists today, and he actually sells these exact shirts on Etsy still. I did order one for this video, but I think I bought it too late. It's not here yet, so I'm sorry. I wanted to have a fun little themed outfit, and I failed. It'll probably still be in the thumbnail though. Almost immediately, the store began picking up more and more customers, and soon the phrase Free Winona was everywhere. There is just something really funny about rallying around a powerful celebrity who committed a petty crime when she sure doesn't need anyone's help. There aren't a lot of circumstances where that arises, but it never gets old all the same. Because as I alluded to earlier, a lot of people knew at the time that the absolute frenzy around the story was kind of ridiculous. Winona was not beyond public redemption at this point. Even if it was ironic, there was some level of support for our 90s punk diva. I don't think it gets more punk than stealing from a designer store. She wasn't canceled. She hosted the season finale of Saturday Night Live in May of 2002. And of course, her opening monologue was all about the shoplifting scandal.
You know, people have been acting a little strange around here. You know, there's like a lot of locking of doors and shifty eyes and a lot of frisking.
Then in June of 2002, Winona appeared on the cover of W magazine wearing the Free Winona shirt. And just tell me that this isn't just a little bit iconic. Even more people were buying Free Winona shirts for their white elephant parties. This was a movement that could not be stopped. In October of 2002, the trial of the century finally began.
It's been a day everyone's been waiting for. Would Winona Ryder pay the price for shoplifting?
Pressed against the windows of the Beverly Hills Municipal Courthouse, photographers captured Winona Ryder arriving for the second day of her shoplifting trial.
The whole trial was 5 days long, including on her own 31st birthday. Asking a Scorpio to appear in court on their birthday is just asking for trouble. But y'all, I don't know if you know this, trials are boring. Oh my god, they're so boring. And what's with all the Latin phrases? At least in British courts, everyone is in drag, but my god, it is very hard to make a 5-day shoplifting trial interesting, which is perhaps why instead of really focusing on the substance of the trial, most journalists chose to highlight the absolute looks Winona served over the course of this trial.
Don't forget the perfect wardrobe. Like a good actress, Winona dressed for her role as a defendant in a trial. She wore a lot of headbands, a lot of girlish Mary Jane-style shoes that projected this image of I'm young, I'm innocent, I'm pretty, you don't want to convict me.
In one of my favorite pieces of journalism, Robin Given said the moral distinction between right and wrong does not obscure this fact. Throughout her trial, Ryder looked splendid. For all her courtroom appearances, she was outfitted in a perfectly chic, refined, and demure ensemble. She may be a shoplifter, but she has impeccable taste. Her coat dresses were always buttoned up, and even severe, but they never looked stodgy. And the Marc Jacobs dress, the one from the fall 2001 collection, with that trompe-l'œil, that was probably perfect French pronunciation, contrasting collar, was particularly well chosen. It was so ladylike and polished, such an earnest dress, and it was a year old, as if to suggest to the jury members that they were dealing with a frugal young woman, not an indulged actress. My thrifting girlies, this is a message to you all. If you find this dress out in the ether, I will buy it and wear it and pay you money. Maybe not $850, but that's something we can discuss later. The trial began with testimony from Saks security chief Kenneth Evans, who narrated the 45-minute-long security tape as Winona allegedly shoplifted nearly 20 items. The thing was, even though Winona did look kind of dazed and suspicious leaving the dressing rooms, you couldn't actually see her removing security tags on the tape. And as I said earlier, she did actually buy some items earlier in her visit. All you could see on this tape really was sort of what looked like a sad, confused woman on a shopping spree. And that's how I look whenever I'm out in public. Yes, she was sure wearing a lot more accessories when she left than when she came in, but who's to say, really? However, another Saks employee testified that they peeked through the dressing room, But when they peeked, they claimed to have seen Winona cutting the security tags off of items with the scissors she was later caught with in her bag. But it's not over. It is time for celebrity lawyer Mark Garagos to reveal his defense. Members of the jury, do you see this slay diva and her country headband? Do you really think she'd be caught dead in something like this Discount Claire's hair clip? Or these sweaters with holes in them? I don't think so, and I am so sad that we only have text documentation of this argument being made in court. I want this legal argument meticulously preserved in film forever. Also, Mark said, can we just acknowledge this is giving inside job? This is giving a hit to me. Garagos called another former Saks employee who claimed Kenneth Evans, the one who narrated the security footage, was out to get our girl interrupted. According to this former employee, Kenneth allegedly said that he had a very important case now, and basically, he was gonna nail that rich Beverly Hills bitch on shoplifting charges. The ex-employee said Kenneth was very anxious, nervous, and Kenneth supposedly said he would bring her down one way or another. He would make enough evidence so it would show the shoplifting charge was true. Unfortunately for Winona, the prosecution pointed out, "Sir, aren't you no longer allowed on Saks property because you threatened to sue Saks after it was discovered that your wife was having an affair with another Saks employee?" Well, yes. Although Winona had in the store said that she had stolen as some sort of film preparation, from what I could find, it seems like Garagos decided to go with a bit of a different angle, which I can't say I blame him. Garagos argued that this was simply some sort of misunderstanding. You see, Saks actually has a program where wealthy clients can bring items home and actually sample them before paying for them in full. Also, as a celebrity, Winona often relied on assistants to check out for her or handle bills for her. Now, Winona, to be clear, was not a part of that program, nor was her assistant with her that day. But it was also important to mention that Winona was on some very high doses of prescription painkillers at the time. She had broken her arm a few months before the incident and had struggled with chronic pain ever since. In fact, at one point in the trial, the paparazzi shoved into Winona so hard that she ended up refracturing her broken arm.
Returning to court after a recess, Winona Ryder was hit on the elbow in the crush of television cameras. A court official also suffered a blow to the head. The 30-year-old actress was taken away for medical treatment after she complained of swelling, while security officials viewed a tape of the incident.
It was possible that the drug she was on at the time made her confused and led her to accidentally take items without paying out of the store. If that were true, that would be somewhat significant because both grand theft and burglary are what's called specific intent crimes. That means that in order to be found guilty of either crime, Winona would need to have specifically intended to go into the store and steal those items. Generally, if you intentionally get drunk or misuse drugs, you're still on the hook intent-wise because it would just be pretty bad for our society if crime was legal if you just got drunk first. But if Winona took the drugs as prescribed by her doctor, that might be considered what's called involuntary intoxication because she wasn't intending to get high in that case. It's not the strongest legal defense because people are still prone to judgment when it comes to use of drugs, even if they are prescription, but it does at least add context to some of her behavior that day. Finally, Mark argued that this was entirely a smear campaign against this high-profile celebrity. Winona didn't have privilege because she was a celebrity. If anything, she was being targeted because she was a celebrity. Winona wasn't this evil woman the prosecution made her out to be. For instance, as mentioned by Garagos, in 1993, a child named Polly Klaas went missing in Winona's hometown. Winona played an active role in the search effort and offered a $200,000 reward for her safe return. Sadly, when search and rescue found her, they were too late. But Winona stayed in touch with her family afterwards and ended up dedicating her performance in Little Women to Polly, since Little Women was Polly's favorite book. And Rundle, the prosecution, did not like that Garagos invoked this tragedy in his defense of Winona's character. However, I do not think her response to this argument was any more tasteful.
Body of a dead child, and in some way say because she supported
that is just so outrageous, Judge. That really is.
For a year, and I'm asking.
She hasn't listened to anything for a year. She's only been on this case for 4 months.
It's also worth mentioning that Polly Klaas's father came out in support of Winona publicly and denounced the prosecution's response.
She helped me. She came to me in my deepest, darkest hour of need and offered up to $1 million of her own money for the recovery of a little girl that she had never met. You tell me who else has ever done something like that. Apologize to me? No, there's no need to apologize to me. She was a loyal friend to me, and I'll be a loyal friend to her. Winona Ryder may be a double felon, but she's a double felon with a very big heart and a very generous spirit, and nobody should ever forget that.
Also, I didn't make this clear when I was recording, I think because I was trying to avoid spoilers, but this happened over 2 decades ago, so I don't know why I bothered. Mark Garagos wasn't arguing that Winona helped this family so she was incapable of stealing. This was during the sentencing, so after she had already been found guilty, and it's very par for the course for defense attorneys to note any charitable acts that defendants have done, mitigating circumstances. Basically, all Garagos is saying at this point is that Winona is someone who contributes to her community and could continue to do so if she wasn't put in jail at that point. So just wanted to make clear, Mark Garagos bringing up nice things Winona has done in her past was not weird at this point. In fact, it would have been expected for him to talk about stuff like that. But in the end, the jury found Winona guilty of felony vandalism and felony grand theft. Both of these crimes had a maximum penalty of 3 to 4 years in prison. But when it came to the actual sentencing, Winona was only ordered to pay a $3,700 fine, $6,355 in restitution to Saks, and she was ordered to perform 480 hours of community service, all while on probation for 3 years.
You have refused to accept personal responsibility for what happened on December 12th. And I will tell you that although contriteness is not a requirement of probation, it is certainly something that is a necessary component to the successful completion. Certain issues that may be the root cause, your decisions and conduct from then and from today's date in large part are going to define your public reputation and image and possibly your future freedom.
Her felony charges were also later reduced to misdemeanors in 2004, so all in all, a pretty minor punishment when all was said and done. But her sentence in the end also highlighted the complete theatrics of the prosecution, which is very much in line with our legal system's response to property crime versus things like violent crime, which often pose a much more imminent threat to various communities. I need to emphasize, Saks did not want this to be a big trial. And once the prosecution went forward with the charges, Garagos offered a plea deal where Winona would pay a fine, reduce the charges to misdemeanors, but accept those misdemeanors. But the prosecution at this time very much wanted a public trial, no matter the cost, which I really hope did not delay the trials of other accused people who did not have the benefit of bail release or a legal dream team on their side. There was, however, one upside for Winona. Even though Winona had shoplifted multiple Marc Jacobs items, Marc Jacobs loved her wearing their designs in court. So Winona became the face of their 2003 spring campaign. They never actually said that her modeling work was related to the shoplifting incident or the trial, but like, that aside though, Winona was never able to maintain the career momentum she had in the 90s. It's often said that she was totally blackballed from the industry after her trial, which is for the most part true. It's not even necessarily because Hollywood executives were so scandalized by her crime. The reason is probably a lot more practical and boring than that. It was also probably a lot harder to get insurance on Winona's performance, which would absolutely block her casting in major movies. Actually, Woody Allen, of all people, said that he wanted Robert Downey Jr. and Winona to star in his 2004 film, but he wasn't able to secure insurance on either of them, given their recent public scandals. However, I think we dodged a bullet there. Winona being in one Woody Allen movie was bad enough. But it's also important to remember that Winona never truly disappeared. When she wasn't at Iraq War protests, she was working. She was in at least one film each year from 2003 to 2013. Granted, these weren't the big blockbuster hits she was used to, but they also weren't totally obscure projects either. She was in movies with actors like Keanu Reeves. She was in Black Swan. Winona has also since said in 2016 that her pullback from Hollywood was a lot more self-imposed than people thought. She says the trial was sort of a wake-up call, and she moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco specifically so that she could focus on herself and her mental health. And looking back, she says that she's actually grateful she was out of the spotlight during this time because the 2000s were not a great time to be a woman in Hollywood, which she has a point there. I also think whether Winona was blackballed from Hollywood or she herself pulled back, her withdrawal from the limelight wasn't just from this one shoplifting incident. Even before 2001, Winona's star as this young ingenue was already fading because she was a woman in her late 20s, basically 1 foot in the grave. And after her trial, she was even worse, a woman in her 30s. Also, Hollywood wasn't making the cult, indie, quirky characters that Winona played anymore. This was a post-9/11 media landscape. Fun movies were not allowed. Only dark, twisted reboots of children's superhero films. The roles for women at that time were sexy sidekick to action hero man, or mom of action man who just loves vigilante justice and guns. In fact, in 2009, Winona played Zachary Quinto's mother in Star Trek. I'm just going to give you a second to guess the age difference between these two actors. Now go on. No, it's worse. She was 6 years older than him. What is even more sick and twisted about this is after doing that, J.J. Abrams thought to himself, you know what? You know who should play a character named Khan Noonien Singh? Benedict Cumberbatch. The Ariana Grande of Hollywood. But finally, in 2016, Winona Ryder was able to make her full mainstream comeback, curtain bangs and all, as Joyce Byers in Stranger Things. No, because why do Winona Ryder and I kind of have the exact same haircut? No wonder this was her big break. Finally, the world was ready to acknowledge that we'd been missing out on this diva for the last 15 years. What a fool we have been. And just in 2024, Winona was able to reprise one of her most iconic roles in Beetlejuice, which was just okay, but it's not about the quality of the film, it's about the principle. Over the years, it seems whenever someone is doing a cover story on Winona, they ask her about this infamous shoplifting incident. It does feel like since this incident, she's become much less open about the details of her personal life, her romantic relationships, her mental health, and I can't really blame her given how people reacted to her just acknowledging that she had depression in the 90s. But she does still give some explanation as to what went on that day. For instance, in an interview in 2007, when asked if Winona felt guilty about shoplifting, Winona said, "I didn't have this tremendous sense of guilt because I didn't hurt anyone. Had I physically harmed someone or caused harm to a human being, I think it would have been an entirely different experience." In 2016, in an interview with Porter magazine, Winona said, "Psychologically, I must have been at a place where I just wanted to stop. I won't get into what happened, but it wasn't what people think. And it wasn't like the crime of the century, but it allowed me time that I really needed, where I went back to San Francisco and got back into things that I just had other interests, frankly." In 2024, while promoting Beetlejuice 2, she was actually the most open she had been about this in a while. In an interview with Esquire, she said, "It's so funny because there's so much lore around that story, but it really couldn't have been more than me thinking I'm going to my car to get something." She was, as she says, in a daze. The whole world was, she feels, in the aftermath of 9/11. She hadn't meant to steal anything. Initially, she didn't even realize what was happening. She felt she had made a simple error, accidentally walked out of the store without paying, and it could all be sorted out. It kept being like, "Oh, it's fine, this is just like paperwork." And I was like, okay. I was so confused. Even with her huge catalog of iconic roles, Winona Ryder's shoplifting is still a huge mark on her career. It's certainly not lost on anyone, I think, that Winona's shoplifting was such a moment. Meanwhile, men who were accused of far worse crimes still have prominent careers. It's also just a perfect example of our fascination with celebrity trials generally. Not only do celebrity trials provide us with fantastically horrifying celebrity portraits at times, we like seeing people we perceive as uber powerful beyond reproach in truly one of the most humbling settings you can be in, a courtroom. from OJ Simpson to Winona to now Amber Heard and Gwyneth Paltrow, and maybe one day Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. In the grand scheme of celebrity trials and scandals, Winona Ryder's looks pretty quaint in hindsight. Well, except maybe compared to Gwyneth Paltrow.
He has deterred you from enjoying the rest of what was a very expensive vacation.
Well, I lost half a day of skiing.
Yes. Right. Okay.
Was Winona really so wrong as to be blackballed for over a decade? I don't think so. In fact, I think she should have stolen more. Who among us hasn't partaken in a little 5-finger discount from time to time? Stealing is wrong, don't do it. But like, really, who among us? I think with the state of American politics being what it is, we are due for another petty celebrity scandal like this one. No more Kanye on Twitter, no more sexual harassment. Stop doing all that. I want some good old-fashioned victimless crimes. I want Sabrina Carpenter to get caught pirating Sims 4 packs. I think Timothée Chalamet should sell fake Sunny Angels at an Oscars after party without a permit. And I just know one day we're gonna catch Jojo Siwa loitering outside a 7-Eleven. Is that so much to ask? I mean, really? Well, folks, that is all I have for today. I hope you liked it. Hope you found it interesting. Wanted to take this time to again thank our sponsor Trainwell. A reminder to take the quiz to find your personal trainer and get 14 days free of personal training. I highly recommend. And as for me, if you want to see more content from me, I upload monthly bonus videos over on Patreon for the people who support me over there. But if you don't want to do all that, that's fine. That's cool, I guess. But if you liked this video, you could feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.